that's recording. So if you press record on there, please.
Well, it's Thursday, first Thursday full Thursday of term. Welcome everybody to Lit Soc, and it's good to see everybody. Some faces have moved on to elsewhere. We're missing them, so hello everybody. And as ever, it's first day back. We are talking about what we've been reading, and also we are going to celebrate last night's announcement of the Women's Prize, which was given to Susanna Clarke for Piranesi. I'm just going to start with this because I love this book. If you like Narnia, then you will like this. It's quite sinister in lots of ways, but it's also got lots of familiar things. So, Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, winner of the Women's Prize 2021. And also last night, Maggie O'Farrell received had a party and received her award in person because she hadn't been able to last year. It all had to be virtual. So here we go. When the moon rose in the third northern hall, I went to the ninth vestibule. Entry for the first day of the fifth month in the year the albatross came to the southwestern halls. When the moon rose in the third northern hall, I went to the ninth vestibule to witness the joining of three tides. This is something that happens only once every 8 years. The ninth vestibule is remarkable for the three great staircases it contains. Its walls are lined with marble statues, hundreds upon hundreds of them, tier upon tier, rising into the distant heights. I think did I read this before we broke up? It does seem familiar. Anyway, so this will be something like my fourth reading now. I love it. It's really worth it. It's a sort of like our new mural. It's like the wood between the worlds, and it has got echoes of Narnia, as you will see from. This is Mr. Tumnus, I think. There's certainly echoes of Mr. Tumnus anyway. Yeah, great. Okay, let's start with what we've been reading then. Who wants to go first? Martha, you going to go first?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, are you going to come and sit here and talk us what you've been reading, or are you just going to talk to us?
Just
You'll talk. Okay. What have you been reading? What were you reading over the summer?
over the summer, I did read this really interesting book that I really liked called It Ends With Us. It's about this girl, and she just moved to Boston, and she finds her old journals from when she was 15, and she finds out that this homeless guy Atlas is living in the abandoned home next door to her.
Mm-hmm.
And so then she takes care of him and stuff until he eventually moves away, and they have a romantic relationship. And so then they eventually, after 10, 20 years, they do eventually find each other again.
Oh, hey, that's that story. That's excellent. And how did you find that? In a bookshop, or somebody recommend it?
Social media.
Social media. Oh, well, that's the good thing about social media. It tells you about things you didn't know. Yeah, great. So that was your favourite of the summer, was it?
Yeah.
Good. Excellent. Anything else?
I started reading the Maze Runner book,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm really enjoying at the moment.
Mm. Good.
Anyone else read The Maze Runner?
Anybody else? Have you read The Maze
first
Runner?
one.
No?
Very popular,
No?
very popular dystopia. So,
Yeah.
what did you, Martha? What did you think of it? Have you finished it?
No.
Yeah. So, how far into it are you?
I don't know. Really. I don't know a specific page.
About
First book.
Halfway, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And like what you've read so far?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It's really cool.
Yeah.
Could you tell just roughly what was it about? What's the basic setup?
So these boys, they get trapped in a maze by these people called Wicked, and Wicked are trying to find a cure to this disease, and so they think that the boys that they've put in the maze are the key, or one of them is the key to the cure of the sting by these massive robotic spiders called Grievous.
Yeah, that's basically a very good summary.
Yeah.
Now, has there's a couple of twists, but has one of the main twists happened yet? Because you mentioned the boys.
Yeah.
Has the twist happened yet?
Yeah, there's a girl.
Oh, we've
There's
got a
girl as
twist.
well. There's a girl.
There's a girl as well, but
There's a
we
few
don't. Oh, she's in disguise, isn't she? Is she in disguise?
No, she just it gets, because the way they arrive, I can't remember exactly, but they all arrive one by one, and they're waiting. It's like, oh, a new arrival's coming, and of course it's all boys, and then suddenly, oh, it's a girl.
Right.
becomes a girl.
Right. Okay.
And there's a reason why, but it all becomes clear later.
Okay. Interesting. Have you done any mazes? Have you actually walked any mazes?
Yeah, like corn mazes and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting. So
Hampton Court.
good.
Haven't been to Hampton Court Maze?
Yeah. It's great.
Bit safer than the maze in the maze room.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Because if you're laboratory mice and rats, quite often when they're injected with things, or there's an experiment going on, they quite have to do a maze in order to see what they're processing and if they learn things. So there's sort of laboratory rats, aren't they, in a way? If they've been captured for this. Yeah. Okay. All right. Evie, what have you been reading? Thank you, Martha.
I've been reading Limitless by Tim Peake.
Oh yes.
I've been reading it, but I've also listened to the audiobook. I really enjoyed it because it showed his emotions not only through his Army, Air Force and parachute training, but also with the stuff that comes with being an astronaut, the way it starts, because it starts when his Soyuz capsule going up to the International Space Station is having trouble docking, and it's like saying how the commander was taking control, everything was really tense, and that kind of made me want to push on, because I was like, okay, I want to know what this is all about. Yeah, but I've really enjoyed it, and the good thing about the audiobook is it's actually narrated by him, so it makes it feel even better.
Oh, that's great.
That's
Yeah.
He was great at communicating when he was up there, wasn't he? He was always on. He was on Twitter. He was doing podcasts from there. He was doing video shows. It was great. It was really extraordinary.
Yeah, and right now I'm reading the Sherlock Holmes favourite story.
Yes.
I'm on the first one, the Speckled Band, but I think favourite Sherlock Holmes would be Study of Scarlet, because the first one I read, so it's the best.
And have you seen any of the adaptations at all of the Sherlock
I
Holmes?
haven't really seen any adaptations, just because I've always felt like I wanted to stick with it, but maybe soon I'll go for the adaptations.
There's very traditional with Jeremy Brett, and then there's non-traditional with Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah.
And Al. So yes, there's a huge amount of choice, and obviously there are films as well with Robert Downey Jr.
Yes. Where he's a bare knuckle fighter.
Yes, indeed. Yes, yes.
Very different to the original.
Very different.
Yes.
And what's the new one called Enola Holmes about his
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
He's in that, so that was an interesting one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them.
So how many? So you're reading? Which one are you reading at the moment again?
The first one, Adventure of the Speckled Band, I think.
Okay, and you read Study in Scarlet.
Yeah.
Any others, or is that it?
I think I read the one about the Four. I can't remember the exact title. But that one had a huge amount of twists, and I really liked that one.
When you say the fall, do you mean the waterfall?
No,
The Sign of Fall.
Yeah,
the Sign of
Sign of
Fall. I
Fall.
think you said the fall.
Yeah, the Sign of
Sorry,
Fall.
the Sign of Fall. Yeah.
Not the end yet.
No.
Excellent.
But, yeah, plenty. We got loads down there as well. I see quite a library copy there. But
Yeah.
we pretty much all of them. All of Sherlock.
You like Sherlock Holmes, don't
I
you?
love Sherlock Holmes. Yes.
Yeah. Not my favourite, but I like other detectives more. But he's okay. Miss Milton likes Sherlock Holmes too, doesn't she?
Yes, she does. Hello, Miss Milton.
Hello, Miss Milton. Right, Dahlia, what have you been reading?
I've read a few books.
Mhm.
One of the ones I read was The Book Thief. by
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah, great.
It was so good. I finished it really quickly. I thought it was really interesting that the story was narrated by death. I found that quite...
It's a very macabre sense of
Yes.
humour, isn't there? Yes, yes.
And because it was narrated by death, it was quite interesting, and as you said, he had like humour and everything in something that wasn't humorous at all. So the Holocaust, I found that perspective very interesting, and it was a really good book as well. I also started A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking.
Oh wow!
We're getting highbrow here, aren't we?
Physics is one of my favourite subjects, which is probably a very unpopular opinion, but
Oh no, it's a great subject. Look at Brian Cox.
Exactly.
It's quite difficult. I've just started it, but I'm really enjoying it.
Good.
Also, I've started The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Classic.
Yes. It's quite a difficult book, but I'm really enjoying it at the moment because it's quite like twisted and
Twisted is right. The mot juste.
Yes. It's very good, but yeah, lots of things that that have challenged me, which is nice.
Challenging in a good way.
Challenging in a good way, yes.
What's really interesting is that the house was real. The house that he lives in, that Jekyll lives in, with this back entrance.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know Leicester Square?
Yeah.
Well, you know the big Odeon. If you walk into Leicester Square from Charing Cross Road, and the great big Odeon that's dominates the square, where all the premieres are held. Well, that's where the house was, on that side of the square, and basically the bad side, the side which was the more sinister side, was on Charing Cross Road, and Ian Rankin, the great he's a Scottish detective called Rebus, because he's really interested in Stevenson, because Stevenson came from Edinburgh, like he does, and he did a documentary, and so Charing Cross Roadside was where the bodies were brought in, because the doctor who lived there was a surgeon, and he was teaching medical students in the centre of the house in this basically this operating theatre. But on the Leicester Square side, it was very respectable. It was the wealthy side. It's where he had, friends, etc. So very similar to what's going on in the book. Yeah. In this documentary, Rankin goes to the site, and they explore sort of the two halves of the two, places really. Because Leicester Square and Charing Cross Road now, you wouldn't. I mean, they're pretty much the same sort of, theatres, cinemas, etc. But in Victorian times, it's very different. So yeah, it's really fascinating. Yeah. Oh, great. So we don't do it. We used to do it for GCSE, not anymore. But it's a great book. It really is. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. So what have you been reading?
Well, I read Life and Death, which is an adaptation of Twilight, which I'm a big fan of. And basically it's when all the girls are boys and all the boys are girls, so it's not Edward and Bella, it's Boo and Edith. And I found that really interesting because the original was quite like stereotypical, like the boy was the vampire who saved her and everything, but then
agreed.
In the other one it was a girl. And also the ending was different, which I wasn't expecting. And he ended up being changed into a vampire. Oh. And obviously I wasn't expecting it, but it was quite interesting because you kind of, because in Breaking Dawn where she gets turned, it doesn't explain much because she's passed out. But in this one, it's got a lot of descriptive vocabulary about all the pain and stuff.
Right. So sort of brought up to date really with what's going on now. Yeah. Excellent. Anything else?
I can't remember anything, but
I know.
I did start Midnight Sun, which is another adaptation of Twilight.
Do you like vampire stories?
Yeah, well, mainly just Twilight.
Mainly just Twilight. Oh, okay. Because I was going to say,
there are other vampire stories are available.
Yes, they are. Dracula.
Dracula, but what else have we got that's vampire?
Oh, there's plenty. I mean, you've
Carmilla?
got the Vampire Diaries, you've got P.C. and Kristen Casts, and you've got, and they were really in vogue about 10 years ago now. And it's not just vampires, but things like fallen angels as well. And of course,
try the Graveyard book.
the Graveyard
Try the
Book,
Graveyard
yes.
Book, because that's Neil
That's a really
Gaiman.
good
It's
one.
wonderful, isn't it?
It's not strictly vampires, but
Not strictly vampires,
supernatural.
there's a vampire in it.
Yes, there is
very
vampire. in it.
good.
And loads of other weird and wonderful characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also read When the World Was Ours.
Oh, yeah.
Which
Yeah.
my auntie got it for me because she knows I like World War II and stuff. And we have this tree house, and well, it was technically a platform, but I sat on it the whole summer reading it, and I didn't actually move. I got a really sore bum.
Sounds great.
It was wooden.
Wooden
Anyway.
floor, yes.
And-
This
yeah.
came out just before we broke up. When the Sky Falls, I read this. This is a true story, and it's about World War II, 1941. So the Blitz is at its height, and it's got a gorilla in it and it's all based. It is based in London, but it never actually tells you it's in London. What happens when the sort of world is falling apart? What happens to the animals? Who looks after them? How do you get food for animals when there's no food, almost no food for everybody? Because when rationing is so bad, and it's a lovely, it's a great story. It's really painful, but it is amazing. The day I went to see Michael Morpurgo at Barnes Literary Festival, I saw this in the Barnes bookshop, and because it's got Michael Morpurgo there, I bought it. So I really enjoyed that. And that's Adonis, the great big gorilla at London Zoo. So if you enjoy war stories, you might enjoy that, Dahlia. Enjoy that.
Great. He's a good author.
Last year.
You read Twilight last year, I remember. Yeah.
I was a very big fan.
There we
I'm
go.
a bit obsessed.
I had,
Everyone,
I had posters in my
yeah.
room. They're still up. I haven't bothered to take them down.
I started it last year.
Hmm.
Read a little bit this summer because my sister got me into them again.
Again.
Yeah. She succeeded this time.
Just Gina, you're talking about that.
Karina.
Oh, right, okay.
If my friends that were in my year 6 class in the prep know that I sat on the bench and at break time and lunchtime and never played with anyone I read. I was quite antisocial actually, but yeah, I have Robert Pattinson's autograph.
Gas for
Wow.
It's because my mum's best friend, he's family friends with Robert Pattinson's family, and he texts his mum and stuff. So
I'm so jealous.
yeah,
He's probably right.
yeah.
Local boy.
Yeah, so everyone knows that I'm a bit obsessed with vampires and Twilight. And
Oh wow, there we are. Great revelation of the afternoon.
the only movie I watch
Yes,
is Twilight.
I mean,
And
yeah.
that's what this
I don't think I've
is.
had a gas quite like that one.
No.
All the movies.
Wasn't
Yeah.
it still got to get
I read
really
it like 5 times.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't go that far there. Yeah.
Not bad. Very good. Great. Oh, lots of different things then. So Emily, what have you been up reading?
And well, strange enough, I can't remember barely anything I read in the
Well,
summer.
it's understandable. It's a while ago now, but
Um,
anything at all?
But I started reading Good Wives, the book after Little Women, because I watched the movie like a few years ago because I didn't know there was any books. So I watched the movie and I met my friend, and she said that she was reading the books first. So then I went and bought Little Women, and then I just finished Little Women, decided to read all of it, then realised that there's another book, and I just got hold of Good Wives in the summer, so I've started reading that, and I'm still reading it, but I also got another book in the library, which is Periodic Tales, because I really like chemistry and biology and the periodic table, and it's basically, so far I'm only like 21 pages in, but it's already given me like lots. It's really about how the elements aren't just limited to the periodic table, but you have like history and culture behind them, and they shouldn't really be sorted into what is like commonly known as the periodic table. But like the person who wrote the book sorted them into like power, fire and like other
There are
sections.
other ways of classifying, aren't there? Yes.
Yeah, and he's like, he's written about like so far I'm in like the gold chapter, which is El Dorado, because like he said about how gold used to be like they made it into money, and it was silver, and like some people use it like religious things, and El Dorado was actually a person. It was a thought, like a dream, like a person or a thing, and it tells you like the history of all and the culture that they come from.
Oh, really interesting. Excellent. We got that, haven't we? Yeah.
Yeah, I got this.
It's the library copy that
Yeah,
she's
it's
got.
library copy.
So, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. We were talking yesterday about having a popular science Lit Soc, so you have to, when you finish it, you can talk about it then.
Definitely.
Yeah, it'd be good.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Excellent. Sienna, what have you been reading then, apart from a bit of Twilight?
Well, I started The Hunger Games, haven't finished it. I mean, I read it like in year 7, but I thought I don't really remember it that much, so I'll try again. It's proving to be a lot more interesting now that I'm the age.
Yeah, I think you understand. It's one of those books you can come back to, can't you? And get more out of. Yeah.
I finished reading the whole of the Harry Potter series again, which is quite cool.
You had a very long summer, obviously.
Really, yeah, it was quite long. And also I started one of the books that I read a long time ago. And now that I'm a lot older, I can understand it a lot better, and I'm thinking, wow, I really shouldn't have read that as a 10-year-old.
Yeah, we think this all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it?
I don't think it's very popular. Small Blue Thing.
Oh yeah, I know that one. It isn't very popular, but I've heard of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not really for 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
It's more for
Really, it
probably,
went over your head.
I would say 13, 14
Right,
plus.
okay.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
It's still good now that.
But you're enjoying it more.
Definitely.
Well, you're understanding it more. That's great.
I didn't understand why no one wanted me to read it, and I was so stubborn, and I read it anyway.
You probably didn't understand half of it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Did we ever go at you? Did I ever go at you when we were reading it?
It was when she was 10, so before you.
Yeah,
bit
maybe
younger.
before I got my hands on you. Yeah. Before Mr. Conway did. Excellent. And have you started Frankenstein?
Not yet. It's coming today or tomorrow.
Oh, right,
and
okay.
Then I'm going to.
Ah, excellent.
And we're also doing 12th Night,
Yes.
and I'm very excited because I loved it when we did it.
Yeah, we had a great time, didn't we? It was really good.
Yeah.
You have to remind yourself of the song. Remember the
Yeah.
song? I love that song.
Yeah, bring that back.
Yeah.
Maybe a performance for us at Lit Soc, yeah?
So you're going to see it at the Globe?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, it should be really good. Great. That's really good. So Miss Rio, what have you got? Thank you, Sienna. What have you been reading?
I read quite a lot, but I've picked out 2 that are my favourites and one I'm currently reading. I read a book called Mrs. England. I don't know if you've seen that
Oh,
one.
right, okay.
Yeah, it's set in West Yorkshire in 1904, and it's about a woman who gets a job as a nanny for a wealthy family who own a cotton mill.
Oh, okay.
And it's a really interesting book because it kind of goes into maybe domestic troubles in a way that a book from this time period maybe wouldn't. So initially she thinks there's something wrong with the wife and she's really distant, and she's like, I don't like her, but the husband's lovely, he's so kind, he's so, you know, so confident, but then slowly things start to kind of unravel and you realise, I don't know, and you're not sure if it's quite gothic, but, you know, of course, but you're not sure if it's
True or not?
true, yeah.
Is
you're
it from
not
her
sure.
point of view?
It is, it's from the nanny's
right.
point of view.
Yeah.
But then
A
she
bit like the
slowly
turn of the
builds-
screw then.
It is kind
Yeah.
of turn of the screw,
Yeah.
and she builds up a relationship with this woman, and things she tells her completely changes her mind about the whole family, and it's a really cool setting. The way the author describes, like, all the rooms being filled with cotton, like it's constantly snowing because it's right next to the mill.
Oh,
Which is
right.
like a really visual image, and everything's kind of slightly oily and tacky because of the heat coming from the mill. So it was just, I don't know, not very summery, but it was very good.
Very
really
gothic.
good. But yeah, it's a really interesting topic. It's not something that, I don't about that time period.
There's an amazing image in the adaptation of North and South. Have you ever watched that?
I think a few years ago
with Richard Armitage.
Yeah, I know
and
the
the mill with the snow, with with the cotton
snow.
dust, which you just don't see in the engravings of the time at all. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah,
just vividly sums it
yeah,
up.
it was it was really interesting setting. Like the story was good, but the setting kind of made it a lot better. It all just felt a bit like dark and dingy, and everything was a bit dirty all the time. She's like, no matter how many times I open the window, everything's sort of.
Well, that's the thing. It's the dirt. The sheer dirt is gone. You know, when I was growing up, buildings were black.
Yeah,
they were just black.
Something we don't really think
in a way
about.
that they're just not anymore.
Yeah.
It's
good. You probably like it. And I also got really into gardens and botany and illustrations of flowers and stuff like that. Yeah. And so I got this book bought for me, Botanist Daughter. And it's a dual timeline book, so it jumps between the present day in Australia and 1886, and a girl who comes from Cornwall, and her father is a sort of explorer, and he finds out about unknown plants across the world. But in the present day, this woman Anna, she's in Sydney. She's clearing out her grandmother's old house, and in the wall she finds a box, and she opens it, and it's full of botanical illustrations.
Oh, right, okay.
So basically she's trying to track these down and why her grandmother had them in the house. And then it jumps back to the daughter of the botanist, and he's dying, and he says to her, you have to find this flower in Chile. It's amazing. Yeah, it's very similar. It's very similar. But he's like, it's got these miraculous, it can medicinal qualities, and it's basically her trek to Chile to kind of do her father's wish. But they obviously interconnect, and the illustrations are.
They're in the book.
No, there's not any in there, which is sad.
That's a shame.
But the illustrations that the girl in Sydney finds are the illustrations from the girl.
Right.
Oh,
so that's the link, right?
I won't spoil it in case anyone wants to read it, but Botanist Daughter.
No, I've not seen that.
No, it's really good. She's got a few other books that I've got, but I like dual timeline books, and it jumps between the past and the present.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be really bad.
Sometimes it's too artificial.
It's too hard, but this was really well done. I don't know, it was not simple is probably the bad word, but it was done in a way that was very clear, so you knew how it connected and you knew what each person was doing. But yeah, that's great. I like that one, and I'm currently reading The Guest Cat.
I love that.
It's just really sweet. I love cats, and I have a nice little cat, so
It's
just really sweet.
I really liked it.
And I've been really interested in Japanese history recently. I've been trying to swat up on it a little bit more. So this kind of
there's a new exhibition starting at the British Museum this autumn, Hokusai again. Because they did the Grave Wave a few years ago, and they've got another one coming.
Okay.
So, I got an email about it this afternoon. I found it very endearing. I had not realised that the Japanese were crazy about cats.
They love
in the way that lots of people are. But I loved it. Yeah.
Well, you think of dogs, don't you? There's a lot of popular Japanese like sheeps and stuff like that. But it's just sweet. It's very sweet. Cats are sweet.
Yeah, great.
But
it is, and it's really quick. It's a really good read.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So a mix of things.
Yeah,
but
great. Thank you, Mr. Humphreys.
Well, I also read loads, but I'm going to focus on some of the more cheerful books. I think,
more cheerful books, right.
So, maybe this one is not strictly cheerful, but it's Malibu Rising, Taylor Jenkins Reid, who is very much in vogue at the moment. Daisy Jones and the Six, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and then this one. Now, this is set in the USA in the 80s in Malibu, California, surfer culture.
Right.
And it's a family, 4 siblings, and they have a big house party. And it's set across 24 hours, but with some flashbacks. But by the end of the 24 hours, the house has burned down. Their big mansion has burned down.
Oh, great!
It's like, but what is the reason why? And it's not as dark or as depressing as you might think. It's actually
it's not a wildfire then.
I can't say because I'll give too much away.
Okay, give you away.
But essentially, it's a very deep. The characters are very well illustrated, and it's the family dynamics. Obviously, there's a lot of glamour associated. When you think of California, LA, you think of Hollywood and big stretch limos and perfect tans and all that sort of stuff. And there is an element of that, but this is like digging beneath the facade of all of that and getting beneath the surface, because they're all famous in some degree. There's like famous competitive surfers, there's a famous photographer, there's a famous musician who seems to be very modelled on someone like Barry Manilow or Neil Diamond. He certainly has that sort of vibe about him. And so it's and it's a perfect beach read as well. In fact, that's what Fern Cotton says back here. And
excellent.
Yeah. Oh, and Holly Bourne as well.
Oh, okay.
So all these, and it's so yeah, it's good escapism. So yes, there is the house burned down, but it's surprising. The reason, the story behind it is not what you think.
No, okay.
Because you think wild party, it's just got out of control. But anyway, I've probably given too much away by saying that. So there was that.
Yes.
Now we have at least one year 7 around the table, don't we? Yes. Did you read this?
Twice.
Oh, wow.
Twice, and then I wrote some notes.
Oh,
And you wrote-
excellent. She's
Fantastic.
diligent.
I like this. I like this.
That's great.
So, well, I'll let you talk about it for a bit if you've read it. So, the Soup Movement, Ben Davis, what do you think of it?
Well, I thought it kind of had like two genres in a way, because it was like very moving, because it talked about how he had cancer and his friend, and what he was trying to do to help people, and it's also quite funny.
Yes.
Because it has the writer. There was a book, the What's That in Dog Years?
Yeah, Ben Davis. Yeah, that's another of his
the same
novels. Yeah.
author. And that's also a bit sort of funny. My friend read it, and so basically he has cancer, and it's basically like it does flashbacks. So there's one chapter.
It's a
in the
dual
present day,
narrative,
and
isn't it? Dual structure, yeah.
And then he writes like a sort of diary when he's at the hospital, and he makes a friend called Rio.
Yep.
And they're very good friends. And I don't want to give it away. Because
Yeah, I guess it's very hard, isn't it? But what did you think of it? You said it was funny. You said it was moving.
I really liked it because, like, normally you don't like look. Well, he does when he helps feed the homeless people. It's like I don't know.
It is unusual in the way.
Yeah.
So the story, the premise is that he's, yes, you're right. He's recovering from cancer, he's in remission, and he did. So in the past, he met this girl, and they they got very close, and he was inspired by that to go out and do good deeds. By this girl who he was very inspired by.
They have this thing called mitzvahs.
That's right, mitzvahs.
And they have to do as many as they can.
Exactly. That was the pledge that they came
A bit
up
like
with.
Pay It Forward then.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
And so he is taken away from his sort of London, and they go to live in the suburbs or even outside of London. And he's in a new school, and he's struggling to fit in. And then one day he thinks, okay, I might be getting in with this little cool gang here, and they're out getting some fish and chips. And then you see a homeless person, and he does the quite uncool thing of offering his mum's soup, because he doesn't want his mum's soup, to the homeless person. And from there, then it starts building, doesn't it? It gives more and more, and essentially it becomes more about than just soup. It's more about doing good things and the feel good buzz you get from it. And he's got a good intro here, the author Ben Davis, and he says, "Do you ever watch the news? I wouldn't recommend it. I usually come away from my daily dose feeling sad and anxious, except for when they do something about a dog that can breakdance, or a stoat that predicts the outcomes of football matches. That's always a delight. But watching bad things happen around the world can make you feel powerless, like there's too much darkness for you to do anything about it. Well, I'm here to tell you, dear reader, that is wrong. You see, you can make a difference. It doesn't have to be something huge. It can be something as simple as telling someone you like their shoes, or lending them that book you think they'll love. I think we would do that here, won't we? And when you do nice things for people, it makes you feel good, doesn't it? And that makes you want to do more nice things so you can keep that good feeling going. And that person you've done the nice thing for, they're more likely to do a nice thing for someone else. And little by little, your world gets a wee bit nicer."
It's true. Yeah, it's really true.
So that's what it's a very heartwarming, uplifting read. And yes, it is something that I'm going to be talking to Year 7 about when we have library lessons with them in the future.
My copy's in my bag.
Your copy's in your bag, brilliant, yes. Have you been talking about it with your classmates?
Yes, a bit, but we haven't done it in our English list.
Okay, well, you will be doing it. Promise. But yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it, because we picked it. It's the second time we've done this where we've just given books to every year 7. You missed out on that last year, I'm afraid.
We got Cold Tom.
That wasn't to every.
Oh yeah, but that wasn't for you to keep, was it? It was our class reader. But the year before we did The Boy Who Hit Play.
Yeah.
In fact, I was talking to you, Martha. Your group, wasn't I? A couple of days ago about that. Because I couldn't believe it was 2 years ago that we'd done that. We didn't do it last year.
Oh yeah, well last year was
so quickly.
last year.
In fact, somebody was reading it today in class, weren't they? Who was reading it today?
Safi was reading.
Safi, yeah.
Good.
That's worth reading because it's such a great story, great quest story. Yeah.
And so this is not so much for quest, but it's great in a different way. And so that's the first detailed feedback I've had. So I'm glad that you liked it, and I hope. I mean, not everyone's going to like it,
No,
but
a lot of people liked it.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
very encouraging
really
to hear.
Yeah, really is.
Okay, and then I'm going to talk about this one. We all heard of the Beatles?
Yeah.
Yes. So you might have heard Miss Huntley and Mr. Close allude to this earlier. At the end of last year, all staff got a free book. And the three of us devised the list.
We did.
And this is the book I chose. And it's a Beatles autobiography, but it's a very unusual autobiography. It doesn't play out in the way that... biography, not autobiography. It doesn't play out in the way that a biography usually does, in chronological order, this happened, this happened. It jumps around, it's short chapters, and it's sort of like very anecdotal, and it's things, obviously, if you're like me, you're a big fan of the Beatles, then there's a lot of things you know already. It focuses on things that you don't know so much. And there's some really good snippets. I'm just going to read to you some fan mail that Ringo Starr got. Now, you all know Ringo Starr, yeah? He's the drummer. And some of you, well, maybe this is a generational thing, some of you might know him better as the narrator from Thomas the Tank Engine. You've watched that when you were younger, although that might be more your generation. But he was also the drummer for the Beatles, and he's the one who sang Yellow Submarine. When I was in primary school, we used to sing that in assemblies. I don't know if you sang that in primary. No.
My sister.
How old am I?
My sister, because we had a house in France.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That my dad has big speakers. He likes speakers. And we have huge speakers everywhere.
Okay.
Dad's a hi-fi expert, right?
And my sister played that song for ages.
Okay, so it might not be one of your favourites
then, maybe.
Judging by the sound of that. But he was the one who sang it, because most of the songs were sung by, the others. But particularly Paul McCartney and John Lennon. He didn't sing very often, but he sang Yellow Submarine, which is probably one of the more famous Beatles songs. But anyway, so here's some examples of some fan mail that Ringo got.
Right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Dear Ringo, there is only one Ringo, and there is only one Winifred Henderson. Isn't it about time that the one and only Ringo and the one and only Winifred Henderson got together at last? Love and Stuff, Winifred H., Bayonne, New Jersey. Dear Ringo, what did you do before you were a Beatle? Were you an ordinary person? Love, Janet L., Miami, Florida. Dear Ringo, you have the nicest smile of all the Beatles. Are those your real teeth? I hope you don't mind my asking. Sincerely, Evelyn M., Salt Lake City, Utah.
Oh, the Americans are out there, aren't they? Blimey.
Dear Ringo, I named my new dog after you, and he is the proudest dog on the block. With love, Susie P., Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
That's cute.
This is the last one. Dear Ringo, now this is all in capital letters. I'm not going to shout it, but it's in capital letters, okay? Dear Ringo, you are the handsomest man in the world, except for my father. My father is handsome too, in an old way. Love, Norma A., Denver, Colorado. So there's loads of little gems like that in this book. So you can see it's not, when I picked this book, I was not expecting it to have anything like that in it. So it's you can see how big it is. I read it, it's 600 pages, I read it in about a week. I just couldn't put it down. It was so much fun. So, the Beatles. We all love the Beatles, and this is a good reason why. And it also won the Bailey Gifford Prize as well, which is the best non-fiction book of the year. So good stuff.
Yeah.
So that was me. Miss Huntley.
Okay, right. Well, I read quite a lot, which I did not bring with me. What happened to... Oh, it's there. I bought a lot, and I borrowed a lot, which I never got around to reading. I did a lot of rereading of stuff. I read a lot of books to do with Oxford because I went to stay in Oxford. So I picked up just what sort of came to hand this morning, and this is off the shelf. I read this before we broke up, and I love Rachel Joyce's work. She's really clever, and in the sort of different characters that she creates. She wrote a book called The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Frye, and basically it started as a radio play a long time ago, and Harold leaves the house one day to post a letter, and he never posts it. He starts walking, and he walks the length of England in order to deliver the letter that he's written to this woman called Queenie. And Queenie is unwell. She's very badly unwell. She's terminally ill, and by the time he gets to her, she's dying. In fact, she dies. But it's what happens to him on the way that is extraordinary, and the people he meets. And he literally leaves the house, and he just keeps going. So he's got no backpack. He's got nothing with him. Anyway, I really enjoyed that because I listened on the radio and I read it as well. Then she wrote about Queenie from her point of view, and that was really interesting. And this is something like her fourth, I think, now.
It's published was it last year it's published, or this year? It's quite new. Yes, you don't have to ask.
Don't have to ask.
It's
it's the fifth. She's got short stories, and the other one of hers that I loved was The Music Shop, which is about a music shop in Birmingham, I think, and what happens to it over the years, and it has this great moment with a flash mob choir singing. But this is quite different. It's another journey, and it's about Miss Benson, who is a teacher. She hates the class she's teaching, and in order to get out of this terrible school, she steals a pair of shoes and leaves. But before that, as it starts, the Golden Beetle of New Caledonia, 1914. When Marjorie was 10, she fell in love with a beetle. It was a bright summer's day, and all the windows of the rectory were open. She had an idea about sailing her wooden animals across the floor, 2 by 2, but the set had belonged to her brothers once, and most of them were either coloured in or broken. Some were even missing altogether. She was wondering if in the circumstances you could pair a 3-legged camel and a bird with spots when her father came out of his study. "Do you have a moment, old girl?" he said. "There's something I want to show you." So she put down the camel and the bird, and she followed him. She would have stood on her head if he'd asked. Her father went to his desk. He sat there nodding and smiling. She could tell he didn't have a proper reason for calling her. He just wanted her to be with him for a while. Since her 4 brothers had left for war, he'd often called her. Or she'd find him loitering at the foot of the stairs, searching for something without seeming to know what it was. His eyes were the kindest in the world, and the bald top of his head gave him a naked look, like an egg. "I think I have something that might interest you, old girl," he said. "Nothing much, but maybe you will like it." And what happens to Miss Benson is really sad because she's brought up basically by a family that came into being in the Victorian era, and of course between the wars she had to completely change. Life completely changed, and once she leaves this terrible school, a fugitive, she goes to look for this wonderful beetle, the Golden Beetle of New Caledonia, which is it's a very old-fashioned name for an island in the sort of South Pacific, really. And it's what happens to her as she gets there, and it's to begin with I thought, I don't know whether I want to really. It's so dark, it's so so many awful things happen, but as it goes on you just get carried away, and she meets this woman called Enid, who again is not quite what she seems. She too is a fugitive, only not from a school. But so I really enjoyed that. It's what the 18th century used to call picaresque, where it's lots of adventures on a journey, and then she basically becomes the most extraordinary naturalist, working as she'd wanted to for the Natural History Museum, sending things back. It's brilliant. You read it?
No, I haven't.
No.
I've read Harold
You read it,
Frye,
yeah.
I've been meaning to read it. I think.
Yeah,
I like
no,
it.
it's a really quick read as well. I loved it. The other book I read, because I'd read Elmet by Fiona Mosley, is Hot Stew. Now, this is really year 10 upwards, because it's about sex workers in Soho, but it's got other things. It's not really about what happens to them, in their lives. It's what happens about their building, it's all about Soho and the different people that make up Soho and the central London. The only part of London, as this blurb says, that truly never sleeps. Tourists, businessmen, homeless, lost. So you get this building, and down in the basement are the homeless. It's a bit like Tom All Alone's in some ways, a little modern version from Dickens' Bleak House. And there's a developer who's got several different families, and he's now dead, but his family's been continuing. There's sort of Russian elements, so there's all that sort of mafioso going on. Because I used to work in central London in the theatre, there's also, it's very sort of familiar as well. They're trying to get the women out. And they've got this little niche, and they've got these lovely things. And you see on the back, it's got lots of famous landmarks in Soho. Maison Berthaud, I remember really well, going to have coffee and cakes there. It's just a great read. I loved it. The arc works splendidly, and it's also about the politics. There's a policeman who is decided he's going to run for Mayor of London, which means he doesn't do his policing job very well. So the policing job has to be done by the people below him. Just about sums up the current state of policing in Britain. But anyway, so I really enjoyed that. Having just bought it really because it was by Fiona Mosley, Elmet, and that Elmet is the complete opposite. That's the edges of things, but in the countryside. So that I really enjoyed that. And then I love Frederick Backman. I didn't realise there was a new one out. Anybody read? Have you read?
I've heard of him.
You read any Frederick Backman? No. Frederick Backman wrote a book called, very famously, A Man Called Ove. He's Swedish, so this is a translation. But I've read A Man Called Ove. I haven't read A Man Called Ove. I've read My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry, and that's a great book for your sort of age group because it's from the point of view of a granddaughter who's quite young, and it's her perspective of what goes on with grandmother and mother, and I think it's stepfather, and this great big sort of dog. It's very funny. Then there's Brit Marie Was Here, which actually they filmed as well. And Brit Marie, again, she just walks out of home one day and gets herself a job in the middle of nowhere in Sweden. She's a cleaner. She has to become a cleaner. She's left her husband. And then she coaches the local down on its heel football team. And it's what happens to her and what happens to the football team, which it's very funny. But Brit Marie is really she absolutely, things have to be absolutely right. So when she gets to this dreadful place, everything has to be cleaned down, and made better. So that's quite funny as well. And this one, and then I read Beartown. Now Beartown is much more, which is much bleaker. That's a town that's down on its luck. It's got ice hockey teams, young ice hockey teams, and there's an awful lot of bullying that's going on, and elite sport and racism, and basically looks at Sweden and Norse countries and how they're dealing with all sorts of new things. There are another two as well I haven't read, but this is Anxious People. Now Anxious People is set in New Year's Eve. It's got two great father and son policemen, a bank robber who tries to rob a bank which hasn't got any cash in it, like an awful lot of banks don't these days. It's a cashless bank, so what do you mean you want cash? We haven't got any, can't give you any. Oh, so she runs upstairs and it turns into a kidnapping. And it's all got a very long backstory as well. So it's a bank robbery, a hostage drama, a stairwell full of police officers on their way to storm an apartment. It was easy to get to this point, much easier than you might think. All it took was one single really bad idea. And it's New Year's Eve, which, as it keeps running through the whole of the book, you don't go and see apartments on New Year's Eve. You're doing other things. Who looks at apartments on New Year's Eve? So you get to know the people who are there. There's a bank manager, not the bank manager, and they're all anxious not to be murdered with the gun that the bank robber has. But it was fun. I do like Backman's work. I really do. It's there's something for everybody. Beartown is really for year 10 upwards, but my grandmother says sorry is asked me to tell you she's sorry is really for all ages. It's great. So that's yes, I read a lot of Dorothy L. Sayers again, reread, and now I'm back to reading Chaucer, because I shall be teaching that this half term, The Wife of Bath's Tale. Yeah. So that's fun too. So good. Yeah, lots of different things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As ever, diverse range.
Yes, indeed. Yes. So just before we finish, lots of new books in, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
as we've got on the
again,
line
a
table.
good variety here. So you already mentioned Mr. Close Ones too. We got Twitch by M.G. Leonard. I even read The Beetle Boy. So she's she's obsessed with Beatles as well, funnily enough. And I don't know what this is about actually. A bird watcher and escapes convict.
Oh, okay.
Twitch has 3 pet chickens, 4 pigeons, swallow nesting in his bedroom. First day of the summer holidays, he rides at secret hides to find police everywhere. So Robert on a run, and he's got to help catch him by the sounds of it. Oh, Dara McNulty likes it.
Oh, I would think so, yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
So we got that. Then look, we got Stormzy's.
Oh, yes, Stormzy.
Stormzy's got his little autobiography here. And then, Margie Mann, she was shortlisted for the Carnegie Medal. That's a new one there, The Crossing. Something about the coronavirus pandemic. Lionel Shriver's new one, which you were not being too praiseworthy about.
No, I will not be reading that.
In front of Emily there, we've got A Girl's Guide to Being Awesome. So that could be a nice inspirational one there. Got some the poetry book that you asked me to get, this one.
Oh, Imtiaz Darker. Let's have a poem to... It's poetry this term, isn't it? Because it's National Poetry Day.
So yes, I think it'll be fitting to end on a poem.
Baron. Imtiaz Darker, who does live in London now, she was brought up, having been born elsewhere, in Glasgow. So Bairn is a Scots word for child, B-A-I-N-R-N. There is no way to explain the light that rises into a room from the early morning bloom of snow through closed lids, the slow dawning of white. The body is quick to know the pace of the day has changed, the space wiped clean to make way for first bird, first song. There is no way to explain how, even when the world is wrong, too spent, too old, it can still be renewed by you, by your first sound, clear note against the dark. Today, your voice rising into the house, the face of the day is changed. There are things that cleanse the heart. That's extraordinary, because that's very like, well, it's not very like, it's another take on a child, a baby, like the opening song, morning song from Ariel, from Sylvia Plath.
From Sylvia Plath?
Yes.
Okay. That's not the first comparison I thought when you were reading that.
What did you think of?
Well, nothing. I was just concentrating, that last line there, the things that cleanse the heart, isn't it? That's
the snow. I thought the image of the snow is beautiful, isn't it? And then how life changes when snow comes quiet, but also when our baby cries. Yeah. Oh, I like that. That's really excellent.
There you go.
My
Yeah.
mum is waiting.
Oh, you can go. Yeah,
Of course,
you don't
Mum, you
have
don't
to wait
have
till
to
the
ask.
end.
Don't have to- you
Sorry,
don't
this
have to wait
is
here.
a club. You know, you can come and go.
Come and
please,
go.
It's fine.
We're a bit later today,
My
but
sister-
lovely to see you.
Yes, I hope to see you
What
again
time
soon.
does it finish? What time does it
Oh
finish?
well, it sounds like we're pretty much wrapping up now.
We're wrapping up now.
Yeah, it
because I don't want to
varies.
keep
It
you
varies,
too long.
essentially,
But
but
it
we
usually
do-
varies when we,
Depends on what
we started a bit later today, didn't we? Because
And we were gonna, obviously, because we were all talking about what we read, it was always going to be.
yeah,
a bit
absolutely. So
So
great
next,
to see you all next week.
Next
Next week
Can
is-
you remember?
Yes, I'm talking about the Indiana Jones stories on film, because at some point we're going to have a new one, I believe.
Another new one.
I think so. Yeah.
Oh right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure it's in the can.
Number 5. Yeah.
Number 5.
Okay. Well.
Or even if it isn't, it will be soon.
This one looks very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, have a look. by
have a
all
look.
means.
Yeah, should be good.
Okay, well, until
Great.
next time,
Lovely
let's
to
wrap
see
it
you.
up. So,
Bye,
bye, everyone.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.